episode.
Welcome back to Operation Evil. This is going to be Megan's episode, but I am your host, Nyoka,
And I'm Megan, your co-host.
and this is going to be basically her child's, right? She put her heart and soul into this
I did.
case, and you'll see why. And I'll just let her take over and give you the title of it and all that good stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Nyoka.
Yeah.
So this is titled Don't Quit, an investigation into Patty's death. I would like to mention that there will be a part 2 to this that can be found in our Patreon side of things called Tattletales from the Grave featuring Chelsea. It basically gives you more information and kind of solidifies things from, let's say, the grave. And that's where I'll leave it at that. But yes,
I love
there is
it.
a part 2. There is a part 2. And it will be available to purchase as well. That episode will be.
And if
Um,
you're a long listener, you would know that Chelsea has been on the podcast two other times, and they've been very interesting episodes. So I think you will find this just as interesting, if not more. So
yes. And I just want to say, I say it again in this episode, but I just want to give a big thank you to Nyoka and Chelsea for helping me through this because without you guys holding my hand, there's no way that I could get through this. So thank
oh,
you both. I appreciate the time and effort that you helped me provide this story with and everything like that. So
you're so welcome. You did
here I
great. You
go.
did it. You
I
did it.
did it. I'm doing it.
Let's do
Doing it
it.
right now.
Woo!
All right. So I know as you listen to me on the podcast and such, you all know that I have a background in forensic and investigation. I can't even talk because that's how crazy this episode is going to be for me. I'm sorry, guys.
Mm-hmm.
But my background is in forensic investigation. I came here to this area uh, back in 2007 for the Secret Service, got hired, got hurt, and so on. So I just want to say that I left my hometown and I didn't leave my hometown because of this story by any means, but in my hometown, people know this story very well. Okay. I come from a very small town. There's only one, well, there was only one stoplight at this point in time when this took place. You blink, you miss it. So it's a very small town, but everybody talks. So this may not be a surprise to anyone, or it may very well be. I'm not exactly sure. And I also may inadvertently piss a few people off. But I just want you to know that this is my story. This is what's coming from me, from my heart, from my soul. This is no one else's story. But with that said, I'd like to dedicate this info sharing to my grandma, who advocated for my mom, Patty's justice until my grandmother passed away in 2008, and then left the case documents and files onto me. So as I sit here, the documents are literally sitting in front of me. So a tad about me before I go on. I kind of just mentioned it, but I'll just skim over it. My background would make you think that my mom's death had something to do with me going into forensics. That's completely false. I had a great professor that intercepted me when I was going to school for psychology, and he sat me down and said, "You're going to be a Fed," which is a federal agent. So that's when I started looking into the Secret Service. My brain never functioned to just run fingerprints or white substances or blood all day long from a lab chair. I did those things as an internship and I was like, I can't just sit here all day long. This isn't for me. So I had to be active, and if you've met me, you know this. So you give me a problem, I can solve it, which apparently I have in common with Vanilla Ice. So enters forensic investigation as a field that intrigued me and made me think outside of the box. It was a career path into the Secret Service, and my professor was like, "Do it," and I said, "Okay, let's do this." And so I moved here in 2007 for that. So again, it had nothing to do with my mom. However, after my grandmother passed in 2008, she gave me a handwritten letter and all of my mom's case files surrounding her death. I figured the letter would indicate what to do with these files, but it didn't. I read the thing through and through, and there's nothing in there about it. She just has this huge case file that she gave me. That's it. So, a little bit about my grandmother. She's the type of person who could literally feel you and pinpoint your mood or the feelings the second you walked into a room. So like she could read you the second you walked into the room. What's wrong? What's going on? Something's bothering you. You're that type of person. Very, very empathic. Um, I swear I am fierce and passionate because of her. She taught me that if I want something, I have to fight for it and not to be silent about it. And definitely, she always told me, don't you dare quit. And she actually gave me a poem, which I will include in this episode, of Don't Quit. And it has literally driven my whole entire life up to this point and through. I have it sitting at my desk, at my cubicle, on my whatever that's called, foot locker or whatever you want to call it. But anyways, it's right next to my left shoulder. So yes, she's the person that says don't quit. You go after it and you fight for what you want. So when I opened the case documents, they indicated that my mother was killed. So not just a random accident, not that she just passed away, she was killed. It's something that I have suspected for years, but at the time of her death, I was possibly too young for anyone to ever suspect of a parent. So I was 10 when my mom passed away, and I'll get to the story in a second. But, anyways, she was killed. Essentially, that's what these case documents state. I kept reading over these files and records for years, and all I could keep thinking was is she was killed. So let me explain. July 10th, 1993. I was 10 years old. I was at a party with my close friends down the road, and we all lived in Holland, New York. Well, I did. I lived in Holland. My friends didn't. And that's south of Buffalo. It's in the boonies. We're on the horse farms. So when I say down the road, I mean like 5 miles, but whatever. We had a bunch of fun. I just remember at about 1 a.m., I asked my friends if I could go home, but we were all supposed to spend the night. So they were kind of like, what are you doing? I'm like, I want to go home. We were having a bonfire and spending the summer bouncing between farms. And it was basically like our summer camp, if you can just kind of envision that. We were the outdoor kids. We rarely ever were supervised, but you didn't really need to supervise us because we were the good kids. Basically, what our summers consisted of was flipping into the farm ponds and riding horses or building clubhouses. So funny to think about, my best girlfriend at the time went on in life to be an EMT and then later a cop, and then me in the same field as a Fed. So definitely the good kids. So essentially, we could handle everything and anything, and so we thought, until I arrived home, of course.
Let me ask you real quick. So
Sure.
you went home early that night.
Yeah.
Is this a common thing for you to go home early?
No,
Okay.
never.
I
I
just
mean,
wanted to put
no.
that out there.
No, it was like summer camp. We spent hours with each other. We'd catch lightning bugs. I mean, we would swim in the pond until late hours in the night and then go lay out on the trampoline or whatever. I mean, it was not normal for me to leave anything. So the fact that I was like, "Hey guys, can I go home?" They're kind of like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I just want to go home." Don't know what even told me to go home, but
Yeah.
something definitely did. And I will admit the time was 1 a.m. So I walked into my house, and this was after being dropped off by my friend's parents. And I recall my brother and his bestie, they're both also good kids, playing video games, and my parents weren't at home. And this was odd because they ran a farm, and very rarely do they leave or like have like an outside night. I mean, they're not going to be gone at 1 a.m. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I asked my brother, where's mom? I didn't ask him where dad was. I just said, where's mom? And he said that dad went to go get her. And I kind of stood there. And I even think I remember saying out loud, don't you think that's odd? I question everything. And my brother, like, is always the very optimistic one, like, oh, I'm sure everything's fine. Just go to bed. So I put myself to bed. I later wake up, and now, mind you, it's a very hot night. It's, July 10th, and we had box fans in our window. And that's because in Buffalo, we don't believe in AC. Like, what the hell is AC? We don't have AC. We have box fans in our windows. So my window is open, the box fan is running, and I wake up because my dad is literally sobbing on top of me. And I hear him talk. My dad is like 6'1", by the way, 6'2", I don't know, something around there. I hear him talking to someone in my room, but I don't hear that other person talk back. He gets up and he exits my room. Now I'm laying there and I'm awake, but I'm like, I'm not going to move because I have no idea what's going on. Like, this is really weird and strange. So at this time, I think, oh, I know what's happening. Mom filed for divorce and is moving out because dad caught her. So, caught her in what? Oh, yeah, she was having an affair, which at the
Mm-mm.
young age of 10, I knew. She thought she hid everything, but she sucked at it. And if she even was trying to hide it, I mean, I think it was so blatantly obvious. I don't know how anyone didn't know, but of course I did. And I mean, I was quite the detective with my spy gear. I don't know if you remember the spy gear back in
Oh
the
yeah.
days, but oh
Hmm.
my God, I had like everything in that kit. But anyways, so my 10-year-old brain, I thought for sure she was busted. Like, how did dad or the guy's wife not know? Like, how? How? But whatever. I also knew it was not my business, mostly because I always thought if my mom knew, she would literally kill me. She scared me at times. I know what people mean when they tell me that I'm intimidating. My mom was like 1,000 times that, 1,000 times. She was a true go-getter. She was beautiful, she was smart, and fiercely strong. Her friend recently told me, he said, quote, I remember your mom as always being happy. She really had a love of life. She loved to train dogs. It was very surreal when I found out she had passed. It didn't make sense to me. End quote. What I remember of her kills me to share because the last year of her life, man, the last couple years of her life, she was quite the train wreck with her emotions. She had crazy ups and downs. They were basically like very drastically different. And I was around her a lot because, of course, she was a stay-at-home mom and we had a farm, but I mean, we were always together. So I noticed kind of how weird it was. And that day actually was really strange. She had taken me to the mall for a girls' day. That's unheard of. We don't do that. Like, that was really weird. But
That
we
is
went on a
weird.
girls' day. Yeah, it was weird. It was definitely, she's like, let's have a girls' day and we'll go to the mall. Like, what? We don't go shopping at the mall. We're farmers. We don't get out like that. But anyway, we had a blast. I will admit it was a great day. I mean, I remember it vividly. She drove a baby poo brown colored Woody Dodge Caravan, and we would blast the music in that car. And at the time, if you recall the 90s, it was Tom Cochran's Life is a Highway,
Yeah.
Sophie B. Hawkins' Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover, although now I know why she always sang that song. And then my aunt recently told me one of her favorites was Eric Clapton's Layla, which is another stellar choice for someone having an affair, but it also happens to be one of my very favorite songs. And maybe because of her, I'm not really sure because I don't recall her playing that song specifically. But I do remember Blue Rodeo. It was a great band out of Canada who is still rocking today. Anyway, music, it was my getaway and I loved it. And on that day, we sang everything at the top of our lungs. The one song we didn't, though, was Joey Lawrence's Ooh Child. Do you remember that he redid that song? She hated it. I hated it too. But she's like, I'm changing the channel. This song sucks. I'm like, yeah, it does. It sure does. So we didn't sing that one, but we sang everything else. So, anyways, I still even remember what we purchased to that day. We got ankle bracelets. We got matching Bajas. And when I say Bajas, I'm talking about those real thick plaid woven hoodies that you get at like the places where you buy paraphernalia from.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do
I
know
don't
what you're
know.
talking about. Yeah,
I
you can
call
find them
them,
in flea markets and stuff these
yes,
days. Yes.
exactly. I
They sell them
call
in the
them,
booth with the hemp necklaces and stuff.
yes, yes, they
Yes.
do.
Yes.
And I call them Bajas. I don't really know what they're called, but we bought them together. And then we also bought fabric to make scrunchies. And I don't if you're a dude listening, you probably don't know what a scrunchie is, but back in the day, we used to have scrunchies
Back
and
in the
we
day,
would
I have one in
I
my head
know,
right now.
I know,
They're
I wear
actually
them
very
too.
healthy for your hair.
Yes. So it's
Sorry.
made out of fabric, usually silk. The ones that we had were kind of a silky fabric, but they were all different like patterns and designs and things like that. And the one that I recall on this day was the galaxy pattern, which my daughter actually has a very similar pattern as her bedspread. So every
Oh,
time I walk in there, I think of that. So anyways, yeah. So we were making scrunchies. So when we went home, I accidentally broke the needle on the sewing machine and she stormed out the door. And that was the last time I saw her. And dad was walking in at that time. Mom was storming out and she was getting in the van. And I'm out of here. And I looked at dad and I said, I don't want her to go. Like, don't let her leave. And then dad just kind of, he didn't really like acknowledge it. He just kind of walked into the house, like, whatever, Megan. And not in like a mean way. It was just kind of like, I can't stop her. You know what I mean? It was kind of like that. So that was the last time I saw her until her wake, which, if you know me, I don't go to those. And when I saw my mom in the casket, it looked nothing like her. She was all blown up. She was black and blue. Like, it was horrible. It did not look like her, in my opinion. Do I think now, looking back, that they did a good job? Yes, I do. But as a
As a
10-year-old
kid, that's
kid, why the
traumatizing.
hell did anyone drag me up there? Like, don't. Anyways, I hated to remember her that way. And to this day, I hate that I remember her that way.
Yeah.
And if you know me, if you ever see me at a wake, I get really weird and I can't help it. And this is why. Everyone's like, I don't understand why you got to make everything about you. Well, when you're 10 years old and you see this stuff, that's exactly what it is. So be gentle with your children, guys.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. So let's go back. Dad was just sobbing on top of me, okay? I'm in my 10-year-old brain. I thought I would give him time to go back downstairs. And then I'll sneak into my brother's room and I'll look out the window that overlooked the driveway. In my 10-year-old brain, this was it. This was my plan. So I did it. And I saw a minivan and the back was propped open. I thought for sure it was mom. And she was grabbing her shit and she was leaving. And the worst part about this story, I didn't care. At this point in time, in my mind, it is an adult issue. So don't take it out on us. Do your thing. Let me know where the pieces fall. Hope you're happy, because I wasn't, with her choice anyway. How the heck could you do this to dad? That's all I kept thinking to myself is I knew this day would come and here we are. So a bit about my dad. Just want you all to know he's the best guy in the world. He's a horse whisperer, an animal whisperer, and so very supportive of any venture that we had our eyes set on. He always was telling us to smile. The but the thing about dad is he never made me unhappy, where she did. And her choices made me extremely unhappy. So even up to being 10 years old, I was like, what the heck is going on? So in my mind, I was like, get out of here. You know what I mean? We'll figure it out. But the figuring out turned out to be much different than I expected. So after I went back to my room, I could hear the voices outside my window again. So I decided I would turn off my fan. And then I realized that there were way too many voices for this to be a minor split up. Like, there's no way. I went downstairs. I passed my brother's room. I passed my parents' room. I crept down the stairs and I sat on the stairs and I could see my brother and my grandfather sitting on the couch. Now, I did not make my way all the way down the stairs. I just crouched on the stairs and looked down. And I realized it was the middle of the night. It was still dark out. They had the lights on. I know it's late. And I asked them, where is mom? And my brother just looks up at me and he had this like, ugh. He was 17 at the time, I think. He's 7 years older than me. Yeah. So he was 17 at the time. And his face, just when he looked at me, I knew something was wrong. Because, like I told you before, he's the optimistic one, you know, but his face was just done. And he said, have you talked to dad yet? And I said, no. I go, where is he? And he goes, I think he's in his room. So I'm literally sitting right below his room, by the way. Like the stairway is right next to his room. So I walk back up the stairs, the three, and now I know that I don't know a damn thing about adulting. So what the hell is going on? So I go into my parents' room. It's dark. I can see him lying on the bed, and I see his mom, my other grandmother, sitting next to him. And I ask, where's mom? And dad said, she is with Mrs. So and so. I don't want to give names just because
Yeah.
that's not what this story is about. But just know that Mrs. So and so is a person that was a family friend of ours. It was my family's farm boss, if you will. And she had passed a couple months prior. So I sat there and I was like, well, what is she doing there? And as I said there, I realized what I was saying. Like, She passed. Mom's dead. I don't remember crying. I don't know if I did that night. I don't recall crying. I just recall feeling really stupid because I didn't realize that mom had passed away when dad had said that. Like, basically, I didn't want to have dad say it out loud that she had died, and tell his daughter that. Like, that's how he told me. So, of course, I asked how. And I think my grandma told me they think she reached for a cigarette, but basically was in a car accident. My mom smoked like a freight train, so whatever. Dad, he just silently sobbed and sobbed. And then I ended up spending the night with him for what I thought was forever, even though I hated that too. I didn't like sleeping in her spot. I didn't like sleeping in her room. I hated it. I insisted on sleeping in my own room, but I think all the adults were like, no, 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 I think it's best that you don't. But quite the opposite, really. I did not want to sleep in there. So again, people listen to your kids. So mom, she was in a car accident around 1 a.m. the morning of July 10th, 1993, which happens to be the same time I went home, by the way. The van flipped while she was reaching for a cigarette, and that's what I knew. And she passed away. Well, I also knew my mom always wore her seatbelt. So I always thought, like, how did mom die in a car accident? Like, there's no way, right? And these minivans are rated for safety, even in the 90s. Like, that's a safe vehicle. So what the heck happened? So as I sat at my dad's mom's house, that's my other grandmother again. My dad would speak very candidly about the accident. So I'm not sure if he thought my 10-year-old ears wouldn't be paying attention or if it was over my head or what. But I feel at this point with mom, I had grown up a tad too fast and I was just starting to put things together. I just remember him taking me over to my mom's best friend's house for a day, like the day after my mom's passing. And I am not sure if it was to talk, if it was to give him time to talk to the cops or to give him a day or what. You got a lot of things to do when you have your wife pass away. There's insurance, there's all these things. So I think that's what I was doing over there. I don't really know. I didn't ask questions. At this point in time, I kind of just shut down and I was like, wow, here we go. We got to figure this out, and I got to let dad do what he needs to do. So I just remember being over at my mom's friend's house and I ended up just telling her everything. For whatever reason, I just said, I need to tell you something. And then I told her everything that I knew about mom and how this accident made no sense. And the horrible thing, she didn't dismiss a dang thing I said. It's almost as if she knew. So then it started making me think. And I was like, oh my goodness. You could tell she wanted to tell me, but also knew I was 10 years old.
Right.
So
She was
she just
probably
listened.
shocked that you were that
Correct. And
intuitive on there.
and you got to remember too, she was my mom's best friend. She was with her
Oh,
the night she died.
okay.
Like this is my mom's best friend. So knew everything about her. And now was listening to her 10-year-old kid basically telling her she knew all about her mother's bad choices. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot on her shoulders too.
Mm-hmm.
So now, who do I trust? I have a lot of information I'm holding at this time. Like I'm withholding a ton of information. Do I tell dad? I didn't. I thought what I knew would only hurt everyone, especially him 1,000 times over. So I just stayed silent.
That's a lot of pressure for a 10-year-old.
Holy crap. And I held that in until my 20s. So remember the Secret Service thing I told you about?
Mm-hmm.
That requires a polygraph. And that polygraph was 7 hours long. And they kept asking me, have you ever lied to your father? I've never lied to my dad, ever. He always knew where I was. He knew what time I was coming home. If I was going to be late, I called him. I even had a pager at one point in time so we could communicate. I'd call, collect, whatever. I never lied to my dad. But I did withhold information from him for years. Right before I left for the Secret Service to come here, I ended up telling him everything I knew. I don't really remember that conversation well because that also involved alcohol. But I did tell him, and I didn't want to years prior because I just didn't want to rehash that, and I didn't want to make him feel badly for the way I felt. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't. I never want him to feel bad. I mean, he's a great father. He did great things for us growing up. Nothing was bad about my childhood other than the choices that my mom made, essentially.
Hmm.
So, mind you, what I'm trying to say is I carried my 10-year-old brain with me until my, basically until now, into my 40s. So, I never knew what my dad knew or didn't know. And I always just thought, how could you do this to dad, mom? And that's what I always have thought. So the plot changes a few times. My dad takes me to my aunt's house, which is my mom's sister, and my mom's parents are there. And the grandmother that this episode is dedicated to, I see her tell dad something, he flips out and then comes back to the truck. Was that them telling him of the affair like a day or two after her death? I don't really know. I was not too fond of that though. Whatever happened, whatever was said, I don't know. And it seemed like they were trying to get me from my dad. So after my mom had passed, it just seemed like my aunt wanted me over there all the time. My grandmother wanted me over there. And I love my family. Don't get me wrong. Like we had great relationships. But I always felt like they wanted me in school with my cousins. They wanted me to do these things and basically take me away from my Holland life. And I never understood why. It just felt like that. I never confirmed it with them. I just left it alone. And at that time, I was just like, something's going on. I'm not going to ask anybody about it. I just got really mad. Like, I just got really mad. And I was like, you know what? I just lost my mom. Can everyone just leave me alone? So I didn't talk to anybody, no one, about anything ever. And I would just listen. Anytime anyone would talk about it, I would just listen. And it wasn't because, I lost my mom and, I was sad about it or anything like that. I mean, yes, I was, but that's not why I did what I did. I mostly did it because I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anything anyone's telling me. There's a reason for all of this stuff. I'm 10 years old, sure, but I can clearly see something's going on. Stories start to circulate like a fly on the wall. I just listened. And when I was with dad and his parents, it was the cigarette theory. She bent over for a cigarette, lost control of the vehicle, and that happened. I did find out at this point in time that she was ejected from the vehicle, which again, she always wore her seatbelt. So, still, then when I was with my grandma, that this is dedicated to, it wasn't a good enough theory. She was like, there's something else. There's something else here. Now, mind you, she was not feeding me anything I was thinking. I was thinking this on my own, right? So I never really talked to grandma about it at this point in time. I never discussed it with her when I was younger. She advocated to have these big arrow signs put in place on the curve where the van flipped. So there's this, just imagine it is a grade, it's a steep grade, and it's a turn, and it's a hellacious turn. I mean, it's a curve, and it's got culverts in it and a driveway and all these things. Like if you were to hit it, you're gonna flip over no matter what. Like it's a rollover waiting to happen, right? There are no arrows at the time that my mom passed. They pushed for these big yellow arrows and they are there today. You know what I wanted to do was take a Google Street View. I'm going to do that
Mm,
before this is over. I'm going to do a Google Street View of that curve
you
because the
should.
big arrows are there.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyways, I'll include that as well. But the van flipped. So that happened. So to be honest, I always just thought mom is gone. Nothing we do will bring her back. But then I had my daughter and I was like, oh, but the fight is real. Totally understand what my grandmother was doing. I completely get the drive in her not to stop for the truth. Completely understand it. And I understand why she always told me don't quit. Okay. So I was 12 or 13 when I entered high school. I ended up going to Holland because of the sports. And I had gone to a Catholic school prior and transferred to the public school. And according to everybody, the sports were way better. And of course, I was an athlete. So I just decided to do that. So it kept me out of trouble. Our town, as you already know, is very small. One traffic light, you blink, you miss it. Now I think there's two. But the very first day of high school, I remember introducing myself, and this girl, I can't remember who it is to the life of me because I got super pissed. And when I get pissed, I do shut down. I mean, that's an inherent trait I have that's evil, but whatever. This girl says to me, she goes, "Oh, as in the daughter of Patty who was run off the road." And I go, I'm sorry, what?" Now, mind you, I just set foot in school. This chick comes up to, I'm face to face with this chick, and I go, I don't know what you're talking about.
You
So
gotta
of
love
course,
small
like,
towns.
oh man, I was so pissed. So here I stepped back into my 10-year-old body, which is only 3 years prior to this, and I thought, God, here I thought we were just advocating for some lousy road signs because mom was careless and dropped her smoke. But
Hmm.
now here we are saying she was killed again. I'm sorry, excuse me. I just kept going in my head and looked at the girl. I was like, oh, yeah, you want to tell me more? And she said, well, I just know that your mom was having an affair and he ran her off the road. And then I was
Oh
like,
my
well, now,
gosh.
did he? I was like, holy crap. So this is a little change of events, right? So I'm going to call him the subject. I don't want to implicate anybody in this. That's not the point of this. Although I would love to say suspect, I'm not going to. I'm going to say subject. But again, this isn't so much to bash him. This is just to get this out of me. So the subject and I had been friends for years. His kids were actually my best friends growing up. My dad had been friends with him even after the accident. Looking back, now I can't understand why, but I do. I do understand why. But especially knowing about the fair, but my dad had a good reason to remain friends with him, and maybe the subject would confess and maybe get him drunk enough, maybe get him feeling guilty enough, whatever, but he never did. When my dad actually went to the hospital to see, dad wasn't called in at the accident. Dad was called in after the fact. So she was taken literally 30 minutes away from where the accident was to the hospital, right? He
Okay.
showed up there. And when he showed up there, the subject was hysterical and kept telling my dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Like your dad got there and this subject was already there,
Yeah, the
upset.
subject was already there and upset. And
And he's probably like, what's going on? How do you
yeah,
even know what's going on?
exactly. So, another reason why my dad is the strongest person I know. He was able to be close to somebody that ripped basically the closest thing away from him away, you know? You hear all these rumors. So at this point in time, what is really true? And now I've got complete strangers. Well, I don't know who they are. Obviously, the town of Holland knows everybody, but I don't know who the heck they are. And you got all these strangers coming at me with all these different things. So, anyways, I know every time I went to my grandmother's after that, I would always ask her about it. And she would feed me bits and pieces. And I say feed, that's probably not even the proper terminology. She would give me bits and pieces like of what really happened. And little did I know, Grandma actually had a case on it. She was building a case on the subject, which I now have. And I dug into it deeper, believe it or not. I had to. I mean, after her passing, it was kind of like, I need to see this for myself, I guess. So she told me that my mom went to dinner with my mom's best friend prior. And that would explain why the best friend didn't seem fazed by the information that I shared with her the day after my mom was killed. So at dinner, she told her bestie that she was going to break it off with him. I'm not sure if that was true. I have no idea if that's even true. But she left dinner. And all right, so as Nyoka and I were recording this episode, it decided to stop recording. It said, this is now, we're now going to stop recording. And I just kind of sat there with all the goosebumps because I'm literally getting to what really happened to my mom. So, anyways, I'm going to back up a little bit here. And I
And it's never done that before, just so you
never,
know.
we've done like 3 hour long episodes before, or like we'll do 3 episodes in one night. That's like
Yes.
hours long.
Hmm.
It's never done that,
No.
ever. So,
No.
anyways. I'm just going to start back where I was talking about my grandma. So I know every time I went to my grandmother's after that, I would ask her about it, like what really happened. And little did I know that she actually had a case on it, which is now what I have in the case files and the document and everything else. And I dug into it deeper. So she told me that my mom went to dinner with my mom's best friend prior, which would explain why my mom's best friend didn't seem fazed by the information that I had shared with her the day after my mom was killed. So at dinner, Apparently, she told her best friend that she was going to break it off with him. I'm not sure if this is true. I'm not sure if her intentions really were that. And this is when it cut out on me, just so you guys know, which I think is so strange.
That is so weird.
Um, and please listen to Chelsea's episode because it ties right into this so eerily. But anyways, she left for dinner and she went to this bar to meet him. Now, mind you, it's not like they go to bars all the time. I know it sounds horrible, but it's not like that. In Holland, there's like three bars you can go to. There's one at one end of the town. I don't even think that's really technically Holland. And then I think it's South Wales, but whatever. And then there's one in the town of Holland. It was called the Holland Hotel. And then there's this one that's on like the outskirts of the southern side of things. So, anyways, this is where you just went to socialize, you know? So here we are. She goes to this bar to meet him, and he was with another woman. And I guess I have been told that maybe a fight started in there between the two of them. But regardless, mom had left. He followed her out into the parking lot. Now, according to witnesses, the subject got in a fight with her, possibly hitting her in the face. Again, according to witnesses. Take it with a grain of salt. She scurried into her van and took off up North Protection Road going eastward. This road, again, like I said, it's literally one big curve. It's got a grade to it. It's one big curve. Now, it's July 10th. It's hot. It's dry. It's clear. She wasn't wearing her seatbelt because she had no time to put it on because he was actually coming after her in another vehicle. She had hit the curve. It caused the van to flip and it caused it to land on her. So she literally died in a ditch. So when grandma had placed ads in the paper about further information, this all came to light in phone calls she had with witnesses. So back then, it was ads in the paper. It was the answering machines, the tapes, the little tapes in the answering machines, and then, hey, can you call me about this, right? So the witnesses say someone ran her off the road, possibly a black Corvette. And the best part, my high school sweetheart's uncle was actually the one who made the 911 call. And I didn't know that until years later. Um, and actually that was about the time that I learned that he was the 911 caller, that the uncle was the 911 caller. I think at this point in time, I was probably 4 years into this relationship, probably 5 years into that friendship. I mean, we were pretty tight. Friends anyway, regardless of high school sweethearts. Like we were solid friends. Um, I was actually told on the 10-year anniversary that the subject actually confessed to doing this to my mom. So, anyways, apparently the town had covered it all up. Told the subject to leave the scene and go back to the bar like nothing had happened. The sheriff, I guess, was also a friend of the family or something. I don't know. Anyways, but regardless, there were multiple witnesses that came forward. The file that grandma had given me had multiple means of media plugs for more info. And like I said, back then there were newspaper ads, classifieds, answering machines, and private investigators. She actually hired a few, which brought forth a bunch of information. But at the same point in time, all the records were taken by another investigator whom she always claimed was hired by the subject. So here she is getting all of this information. She hands it over to another PI, and then that PI disappears with it all. So I have included the handwritten ad notice requesting a follow-up from an anonymous witness that my grandparents had requested. And with all that knowledge that my grandparents had, I hired my own PI in 2013. And this was to get the archive file from the sheriffs. And I got it. Amongst other things, such as accident scene photos and such, was there another set of tire tracks, especially with my background? I can tell all of this stuff now. The bad thing, it is all black and white photography, and it's terrible. So there's nothing tangible these days. And that black Corvette was apparently sold not too long after the accident. If there's truth to that though, but go figure, right?
Right.
Again, this is all stuff I'm hearing. So now here's me sitting with this evidence, or what I could pull as evidence that my mom was killed. So now what? I sat on it. I went home to help my mom's bestie find her dog. He went missing and she was distraught. So I went home. I said, I'm coming home anyway. He was actually last seen around where the subject lives. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. My mom's bestie's like, what? No, you're not. You're not doing anything. I said, I am determined to go and see this dude. I look just like my mother, except I'm 5'9" with big boobs. But otherwise, I look just like my mom. I went to his work and he was there. So I knocked on the garage door and I walked in and he greeted me like old pals. I said my name. He's like, wow, that's a name I haven't heard in forever. But when he saw me, I could literally feel how he felt. Like I could
Mm.
see it plain as day in his eyes, and I could feel that he probably lives with this every day of his life.
Was he nervous, do you think?
I don't think he was nervous. It was kind of like, wow, that's a name I haven't heard in a while. If you know how he talks, that's kind of how he
Mm.
talks. And he comes kind of like walking out, like, what's going on? And I said, hey, I'm looking for this dog. Have you seen him? I, at that point in time, did not look any deeper into anything else. And that was 2013. And that was because I just needed that closure. And it's not like I ever needed closure to begin with on anything. It was mostly just to kind of put everything at ease of all these things and all these stories that were circulating around. Did he do it? Did he not? Did this really happen? What were the circumstances surrounding this? So
And
that's
so
kind of where
many
I'm
years
at.
have passed, and
Yes.
you're just like,
And the,
I just want answers.
and it's not even that I just want answers, Naoka. You know what it really comes down to is since I was 10 to 42, every time I go home, I hear something new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Can we just stop? At
Yeah.
what point in time can you just let this lady go? And the thing is that I understand that I'm doing this now, but I feel like I have to for me,
Yeah.
if that
Well,
makes
it's
any
different.
sense.
It's your
Right,
mom.
right.
So, yeah.
So, yeah. So here we are, closure, right? So fast forward to the invite to this podcast. I was a guest on the show, and I just remember something that this is something that I tossed around for years. Like, why did I go into forensics? What was the reason? And yet I sat on the case for so long, like, why was I still sitting? Well, I had a dream. I know this sounds crazy, but I had a dream, and it was my grandmother, and she said to use my voice. And yes, I have these weird dreams and they feel so real, but it's she and I were sitting on top of a staircase and with a very ornate railing. Like it's beautiful, but we're kind of sitting there like the way that we used to have these serious talks. Like there was a way that our body gestures would be, just kind of like sitting there, like, I really need to talk to you, fully open and fully aware. So she sits me down and she tells me you need to be more vocal. Now, I don't know what this has to do with. I don't know if it has to do with mom, but grandma, I'm giving it a go. So help me out here. But what's even more crazy is that same week, someone actually said to me in the same sentence format, you need to be more vocal. And I
Hmm.
just sat there and I was like, is this really happening? But, anyways, the podcast is the avenue. So let's use it as a means to get my grandmother's voice out. So my mother, her daughter, was killed. And that's what I'm going with. That's the story I'm going with.
Yeah.
So, all right. Now, at this point in time in 2013, when I had the files, when I did everything, I sat on it forever. I'm still sitting on it. Nyoka invites me into this podcast, and I say to her, I don't know, it wasn't right away. But
Mm-mm.
it was like a few months into it. I was like, you know what, Nyoka, maybe we should cover my mom's case. And she's like, what? And I kind of told her about it. Didn't give her all these details, but I kind of
Mm-mm.
told her about it. And we've talked about it in past. And just as friends, we've even talked about this.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I've got all the files down in the basement. I should pull them out. And I did this months ago. And I was like, okay, one of these days I'm going to get to this. And I've had them sitting on my kitchen table. And I was like, oh, here we go. And I just kept staring at it, going, here we go. But I went back downstairs. I pulled the files out of the basement. I have her autopsy report. which states she had a drink in her system, which is consistent with the supposed drink she had with the best friend at dinner. She had face wounds, chest wounds, the beginning signs of emphysema, which was from cigarettes, unfortunately. Her chest was had internal damage, and the accident scene photos are consistent with a high-speed rollover accident, basically. My grandmother had built a case against the subject, and I don't want her to sit me on the stairs anymore, telling me to be more vocal. So here we're gonna go. Now, mind you, the podcast did shut down halfway through, so
That
I
was
don't know
really
if she's
weird.
trying to tell me to shut up or not. But anyways.
I don't think that, no, not her.
So, anyways, I don't want her to sit me down on the staircase anymore and tell me to be more vocal. I want her to hug me and say the truth always services. So no
Yes.
matter what the truth, it tore a family apart. That's the reality of it. I know from my perspective, this is exactly why I am so independent. I was forced to grow up so fast. I trust absolutely no one, even still. And I have the I will just do it myself attitude. And it's quite annoying, honestly. Like sometimes I sit and watch myself and I'm like, God, why are you this way? But this is why. This is exactly why. This is also why I never stand down, too. So I just want to throw out there I recently had a situationship where I told him that I have never felt so safe before in the presence of someone. Safety. It is the hardest thing for me to feel, especially when I could never trust anyone telling me truth or lies. Like everywhere I turned, it was a different story. I was so sick of it. And even still to this day, I feel that. Even when I say it out loud, I feel that. So I really enjoyed this situationship because whenever I was with him, I felt I didn't have to look over my shoulder for the truth. And maybe that was most likely because he didn't really give a shit, or he was always telling me about his past, which was way worse than mine. So I didn't have to live in mine. And not that I live in mine or like carry it on my sleeve. It's mostly just no one's going to notice that I'm withdrawn from this relationship. Does that make sense?
You're very
So
independent. And so
I
if
am.
people knew you, they would better understand. You don't need
Yes.
someone to fill a void.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to look for anything
Mm-mm.
because for the first time in my life, I felt genuinely safe, even from myself. And I told him that. I said, just so you know, like you give me this sense. And that was the first time I've ever felt that with anybody, even with my best guy friends. Like that's the first time I've ever felt that. Of course, I let that guy go for other reasons, but I believe everything happens for a reason. And I do believe my safety is out there and I don't have to provide it for myself.
Hmm.
I feel like survival mode is just how I live and how I present everything. And I don't mean to, but it's just that's how I feel and that's who I am, I guess. So going back to the situationship, it was real and I did love it. And I will definitely find something else, especially with my heart as open as it is now. Since I mustered up the courage to actually share something my 10-year-old was hanging on to for almost 32 years. Do I always have to be so dang strong? I mean, I wish I didn't have to be, but it's the reality of me and who I am, I guess, and the women before me. Because I would really like to just take a break and let that sense of safety in someday, and very soon would be great.
Hmm.
But I can definitely put the armor down now. At least that's how I feel. Like I feel like I know, side note here, but I had a conversation with Nyoka yesterday after I finished up all of this. And I said, I really feel like this huge weight is just lifted off my shoulders. Like I'm not carrying anything with me into the next lifetime type of thing. I know that's a
Right.
little exaggerated, but seriously,
Hmm.
somebody just dumps this on you and says, here, figure it out. And it's like, I don't even know if she meant it that way, like figure this out, or if it was just here's your closure that you've needed all these years. But I'm going to tell you, looking through them, I don't have the closure that I need, but at least I can get my story
I
out.
bet she's so happy though that you're taking it to a whole different level than she would have ever thought, right?
Yeah. And I think now, modern times, it's not just the ads, it's not just the answering machines, it's none of that. It's, we
Yeah.
have these types of things that can get out
Yeah.
everywhere.
She
You know
was
what I
so
mean?
excited that she accidentally shut us down in the middle of it.
Grandma, I really hope that's what you meant. I don't know. But anyways, let's wrap this up. So to the subject,
Yes.
written and spoken from the 10-year-old and the 42-year-old, you took a soul and I know what you did. How exactly may still be unknown, but there's enough to say that without your actions, my mom would still be here. To anyone with more information, I would love to hear it. I understand that this story is still circulating and there's just a lot of what ifs, and a lot of people will say you're old enough to know now. Hey, that's cool. I'm willing to listen. Please don't think I'm shut down. What happened to my mom? What did you see? What do you know? What gaps can you fill in? That'd be great.
Yeah, and you
Um,
can reach out through Facebook Messenger. We would see that, or even our Gmail, which is Operation Evil Podcast at gmail.com. And just in the subject, address it to Megan. I have information or something like that.
that'd be awesome.
Mhm.
But again, that's not necessary if you don't feel like it, but any gaps would be great. Ultimately, what do I want from this? I just want you to listen. That's it.
Yeah,
Just like I did for years. All the stories swirling around me, all the stories of how my mom passed away alone. Again, this is my story. Very much a continuation of my grandmother's. I know this, but I stayed 10 years old for a very long time. And I have to thank my grandma for leaving me the files, because if I kept sitting on them, I would still feel the weight on my chest that was never mine to bear. And now that weight has lifted, like I said. Being vocal has released something that had been weighing me down for years. My mom's friend told me most of what I shared is just witness statements, so take them with a grain of salt. But deep down inside me, I know the truth. And maybe I need help with the details, but I do know the truth. And I wouldn't be able to scream this truth from the top of my lungs without Nyoka's help. So again, thank you, Nyoka, because you gave me the courage to open up and share my story. And to all the listeners, your kids know more than you think. Give them more hugs. Explain the hard stuff to them if they need to know it, of course. I understand that. And I get not everything should fall on a kid's shoulders. Totally understand that. But if you find that adult problems are weighing heavily on them, get them the help that they need and advocate for their hearts and minds.
I agree.
If you take anything from this episode, if you ever feel like there is just more to a story, find the truth. In the words of my grandmother, whom this episode is dedicated, don't quit. And I will leave the poem for you to read, but it is awesome and it is fantastic and it drives me every day of my life. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate it. And I will leave pictures of my mom's beautiful smile and beautiful soul. And that's it. That's all I got. And holy crap, did that feel good?
I'm so glad that felt good. Now
Thank
you
you.
guys need to jump over to Patreon. Even if you're not a normal subscriber, you can even just purchase this episode alone. If you're curious on the continuation of this, it's a very intuitive episode and it ties in very nicely with the big bow. It's very touching. And I'll put a little snippet out there on social media to give you an idea of what it sounds like, but highly recommend you going over there. And we'll have that Patreon link in the show notes. And it will be called, what is it called again? Tattletales.
Tattletales from the Grave with Chelsea.
Yes, that's the episode you'll want to look for. We're going to have it ready and up. So right after you finish listening to this, you can hop on right over there. So I'm so glad you shared your story. It's very
Yes,
personal.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And again, this isn't to get anybody, this isn't to go after anybody.
No,
It's just basically telling you that kids know more than what they know.
yeah. And
Give
if it
them the
were
benefit of the
you,
doubt.
you would want to know as well. I
Right.
mean, that's normal human,
Exactly.
thoughts right there.
I don't wish
But
ill on anybody and none
no,
of that.
no,
It is what it is at this point.
exactly. Well, thank you for sharing. That will do it for this episode. Um, feel free to reach out to Megan for support information, or if you went through something similar. Unfortunately, some relationships turn out bad, and it can lead, damage behind them. So
Hmm.
You are not alone.
Not at all.
But until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Good job, Megan.
Holy crap.